The knock on the door came before sunrise, sharp, impatient, and familiar. Clara Bennett didn't need to look. Only one person knocked like that. Her son, Ryan. She left her tea half-finished and walked down the narrow hallway of the little house she'd called home for 40 years. Through the window she saw his expensive SUV parked sideways across her driveway. Typical, she thought. Ryan never changed. When she opened the door, he was already stepping inside, phone in hand, a brown envelope tucked under his arm. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, brushing past her without a hug. He sat at her kitchen table as if it still belonged to him, scrolling through his messages. "Coffee?" she asked quietly. "Please," he murmured, eyes never leaving the screen. As she poured, Clara's chest tightened. Something in his tone, in the way he avoided her eyes, it wasn't a visit. It was a demand waiting to happen. She placed the mug in front of him and finally asked, "What's going on, Ryan?" He sighed, closing his phone. "I'm in trouble, Mom, and this time it's bad." Ryan slid the brown envelope across the table. Clara hesitated before opening it. Inside were bank statements, overdue notices, and a loan contract marked in red $300,000. Her hands trembled. "Ryan, this can't be real." "It is," he said flatly. "Emily made some bad investments. We're in deep. If I don't pay by tomorrow, these people will come after us." He took a sip of coffee, completely calm. "You still have your savings, right? From Dad's pension and the apartment sale?" Clara froze. It felt like a punch to the chest. That money, her entire retirement, was supposed to be her safety. "Ryan, that's all I have." He met her eyes, cold and steady. "Mom, you live alone in a paid-off house. You don't need it. You've always said family comes first." Those words cut deep, echoing her late husband's voice. "Ryan, I can't," she began, but he interrupted, his tone sharp. "There's no time to think. I need the money today." He stood behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders, firm, heavy, familiar. "Don't disappoint me, Mom. You're all we have left." And just like that, the choice no longer felt like a choice at all. After Ryan left, the house felt colder than ever. His coffee sat half-finished on the table, the smell of bitterness still in the air. Clara stood by the window, staring at the driveway where his SUV had been, and realized he hadn't even said thank you. She transferred the money that afternoon. Every dollar. Watching her account drop to zero felt like watching her own life drain away. For years she had believed helping her son meant loving him, but now it just felt like surrender. When Ryan returned that evening, he looked relieved, almost cheerful. "You did the right thing, Mom. I'll fix this, I promise." He kissed her forehead and left as quickly as he came. Hours later, Clara sat in the dark, unable to breathe. She looked around at the small home she'd built, the photos on the wall, the memories tied to every object. All of it belonged to her, and yet she'd let others use it, just like they used her. For the first time in her life, she whispered the words she'd never dared to say out loud. "No more." And as the night deepened, those two words began to feel like the beginning of something entirely new. By morning, Clara had already made up her mind. She couldn't keep living like this, always giving, always emptying herself for people who only came when they needed more. She called Caroline, her oldest friend and a retired lawyer who had stood by her for decades. When Clara explained everything, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Caroline said simply, "Pack your things, I'm coming over." 2 hours later, Caroline arrived with coffee and determination. "You've spent your whole life rescuing others," she said firmly. "Now it's time to rescue yourself." Together they drove to the bank. Clara transferred the little she had left into a new account under Caroline's name, safe from Ryan's reach. Then they visited a notary, updated her documents, and arranged for her to leave town that same evening. As the sun began to set, Clara wrote a short note and left it on the kitchen table. "Ryan, don't look for me. The disappointment is mutual." She took one last look at her house, the home where she'd once felt loved, and whispered, "Goodbye." When she closed the door behind her, she didn't cry. She just exhaled long and deep, as if she were breathing for the first time in years. Caroline's lake cabin sat at the edge of a quiet little town in Florida. It wasn't big, just one bedroom and a porch that faced the water, but to Clara, it felt like a palace. She opened every window that first night, letting the warm breeze rush through the curtains. The air smelled of salt, pine, and freedom. She brewed a cup of tea and carried it outside, listening to the soft ripple of waves brushing the dock. Her phone sat on the table beside her, buzzing every few minutes with Ryan's name flashing on the screen. 17 missed calls. Dozens of messages. She turned it face down and stared at the reflection of the moon, dancing across the water. For the first time in her life, no one was demanding, yelling, or needing her. The silence was strange but beautiful. Clara closed her eyes and whispered to herself, so this is what peace sounds like. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight the quiet was enough. It was steady. It was hers. 3 days later, Clara's peace was interrupted by a call she didn't expect. Her daughter-in-law. Clara hesitated before answering. "Emily?" "Clara, please don't hang up," Emily said, her voice shaking. "Ryan's out of control. He's been drinking, calling everyone, saying you abandoned him. He's different." "Angry?" Clara's stomach turned. "Is he hurting you?" A pause. Then a whisper, "Not yet. But he's desperate. The debt, it's not just 300,000. It's more, and the people he owes, they're dangerous." Clara's heart sank. She gripped the phone tighter. "Emily, listen to me. You need to take the kids and leave. Go to your parents. Don't wait for him to fix anything." "I can't," Emily said through tears. "He controls everything, our accounts, our car, even my phone. I had to borrow friends just to call you." Clara took a slow breath. "Then you do what I did. You disappear." "Disappear?" Emily whispered. "He'll find me." Clara's voice steadied. "Not if we plan it right." It was the same strength she'd never been allowed to use, now returning when someone else needed it. "You and the kids will be safe," she promised. "I won't let him destroy you the way he almost destroyed me." 2 weeks later, a knock on Clara's door startled her. This time, it wasn't Ryan, it was a woman in a dark blue blazer flashing a badge. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm Detective Olivia Grant. We need to talk about your son." The words froze her in place. Is he hurt?" "No, ma'am," Olivia said gently, "but he's under investigation for financial fraud and identity misuse. Several accounts were opened under your name." Clara's breath caught. "My name? No, that can't be." Olivia handed her a folder. Inside were documents, forged signatures, fake authorizations, transactions she'd never seen before. "Did you sign any of these?" Clara stared at the papers. "Ryan told me it was for retirement transfers. I didn't read everything. I trusted him." The detective nodded. "You're not alone. He's been using your identity for years. We're preparing a formal case." Clara sank into her chair, her hands trembling. Shame, disbelief, grief all swirling together. "He didn't just steal my money," she whispered. "He stole my name." Olivia looked at her with empathy. "You've been a victim, Miss Bennett, but you also have a choice now, to help us stop him for good." For the first time, Clara didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready to tell everything." The arrest happened 3 days later. Detective Grant called early in the morning. "We got him," she said. "Ryan Bennett was taken into custody last night." Clara stood in her kitchen, the phone pressed to her ear, heart pounding. She didn't know whether to cry or to breathe. How did it happen?" "He showed up at a business partner's house, demanding money. The man had already been cooperating with us. When Ryan tried to threaten him, we moved in." Clara sank into a chair. The relief she expected didn't come, only a hollow ache. "He's my son," she whispered, "but I barely recognize him anymore." Later that evening, the news broke online. Local businessman Ryan Bennett arrested for fraud and embezzlement. His picture appeared on the screen, handcuffed, pale, eyes wide with disbelief. The same eyes that once looked at her for bedtime stories and birthday wishes. Caroline called. "You did what you had to, Clara." "I know," Clara said softly, her throat tight, "but it still feels like I failed him somewhere." Caroline's voice was gentle but firm. "No, you didn't fail him. You stopped him." Clara looked out the window, where the lake shimmered beneath the fading light. Maybe for the first time she'd also saved herself. A week later, Detective Grant called again. "Mrs. Bennett, your son wants to speak with you. He's requesting a meeting at the county detention center." Clara's first instinct was to refuse. What more could he take from her? But something inside her, the part that still needed closure, said yes. When she entered the cold, fluorescent room, Ryan was already sitting there, in a gray jumpsuit, hands cuffed to the table. His eyes met hers, softer than she remembered. "Mom," he said quietly, "you actually came." "Clara didn't sit right away. You wanted to see me. Say what you need to say." He leaned forward, desperation creeping into his tone. "They're making me out to be a monster. I didn't mean for things to go this far. I just needed time to fix things." You forged my name, Clara said calmly. You used me as a shield. Ryan's face twisted. You think I'm the only one to blame? You raised me to believe money solves everything? Clara stayed still. No, Ryan, I raised you to believe love could fix anything. I was wrong. For the first time, silence filled the space between them, not the angry kind, but the final kind. And Clara knew, deep down, that this was the last time she would ever let her son's chaos define her. Months later, the courtroom was packed. The air buzzed with whispers and the faint clicking of cameras. Clara sat in the front row beside Caroline, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Ryan entered through the side door, escorted by 2 officers. He looked smaller somehow, weighed down not just by the uniform but by the truth. When the judge called her name to testify, Clara stood slowly. Each step toward the witness stand felt like walking through years of guilt and silence. Miss Bennett, the prosecutor said, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? Clara met Ryan's eyes. He's my son, she said softly, and for most of his life, I thought love meant saying yes even when it hurt. The courtroom was still. She continued, voice steady. Every time he asked for more, I gave it, hoping one day he'd see it as love. Instead, he learned to take. Ryan's lawyer objected, but the judge let her finish. When I finally said no, Clara said, I thought I was breaking our bond, but I was only breaking a pattern that was destroying both of us. When she stepped down, she didn't look back. And for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't known. She was missing: dignity. The verdict came 2 days later. Clara returned to the courtroom, this time calmer, almost detached. She already knew what was coming, not because she wanted it, but because it was inevitable. The judge read the decision in a measured tone. Ryan Bennett, you are hereby sentenced to 10 years in state prison for fraud, forgery, and identity theft. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ryan didn't move. He just stared at the floor, his hands clenched tight. When the officers approached to escort him out, he finally looked up directly at his mother. This isn't over, he said quietly. You'll regret turning on me. Clara didn't respond. She only nodded once. Maybe, she whispered, but at least I'll regret it on my own terms. As the doors closed behind him, the tension in her chest began to ease. It wasn't happiness, not even relief, but the beginning of something that felt close to peace. Outside the courthouse, Caroline placed a hand on her shoulder. It's done, Clara. You're free now. Clara looked at the sky, pale and cloudless, and said softly, freedom doesn't come cheap, but I think I finally paid the right price. In the weeks that followed, Clara tried to adjust to her new reality. She still woke early, brewed her morning tea, and glanced at her phone expecting a message from Ryan, one that would never come. The news moved on quickly. His trial was just another headline, replaced within days by fresher scandals. But for Clara, the silence that followed was its own kind of healing. She began volunteering at a local community center by the lake, teaching women how to budget and manage small home businesses. Many of them were single mothers or widows, women who had spent years giving everything away, just like she once had. One afternoon, a young woman approached her after class. Mrs. Bennett, she said shyly, how did you find the courage to start over? Clara smiled. By realizing that I'd already lost everything once, starting over wasn't as scary as staying the same. That night, as she walked home under the orange glow of the setting sun, she realized she didn't feel old or broken anymore. For the first time, she felt useful. Not to Ryan, not to anyone else, but to herself and to the women who still needed to believe that freedom was possible. Months passed and Clara began to sleep peacefully again. But one evening, as she returned from the market, she noticed a black car parked across the street from her apartment. The windows were tinted, the engine off, but something about it made her uneasy. She told herself it was nothing, just paranoia, until she saw the same car the next day, and the day after that. Her phone buzzed that night. A text from an unknown number. You think you're safe? He still has friends. Clara's chest tightened. For a moment, fear threatened to take over again. But then she remembered Detective Olivia Grant's words. You've taken back your life. Don't let him take your peace too. The next morning, Clara went straight to the police station. Olivia met her with concern but also respect. You did the right thing, the detective said. Within hours, the car was traced. 2 of Ryan's former associates, now under investigation for intimidation. As they were taken away, Clara stood by the window, watching the patrol lights flash blue across the quiet street. The fear she felt wasn't gone, but it no longer controlled her. She whispered to herself, never again. And this time she meant it. Spring came to Clearwater Bay with gentle mornings and long, golden evenings. Clara's days found a quiet rhythm, teaching embroidery at the community center, selling her crafts at weekend markets, sharing laughter with women who now called her Miss Clara with affection. She no longer checked her phone for news about Ryan. Detective Grant still sent the occasional update. He was serving his sentence without incident, attending therapy, working in the prison gardens. It was enough to know. One afternoon, while packing up her booth, Clara noticed Emily standing nearby. She looked thinner, worn, but alive in a way Clara hadn't seen before. "I wanted to thank you," Emily said softly, "for everything, for helping me find the courage to leave." Clara smiled gently. "You did that yourself, dear. I just reminded you that you could." They stood together watching the waves crash beyond the pier, two women who had lost nearly everything and somehow found themselves in the process. As the sun dipped low, Clara whispered, almost to herself, "I thought peace would mean silence. But it turns out, peace sounds a lot like laughter." And for the first time in decades, she truly meant it. Nearly a year later, Clara found a letter in her mailbox, the handwriting unmistakably Ryan's. Her heart stuttered as she unfolded the pages, bracing for manipulation, for guilt, but what she read instead stopped her cold. "Mom," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness. I'm writing because my therapist asked me to face the truth, and that truth begins with you. I used you. I blamed you. I learned control from Dad and never questioned it. I thought taking meant strength, but I was wrong." He described how therapy forced him to relive every lie, every moment he twisted love into leverage. "When you left," he wrote, "I hated you, but now I see you were the first person who ever said no, and that no saved my life." Clara read the letter twice, then a third time. There were no promises, no apologies begging for answers, just honesty. For the first time, Ryan's words sounded human. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her journal beside a pressed flower from the lake. There were tears in her eyes, yes, but they weren't for grief. They were for closure, for the boy she once knew, and for the woman she'd finally become. 2 years after leaving her old life behind, Clara stood on a small stage at the Clearwater Women's Center. Behind her, a banner read, "Rebuilding After Betrayal." Rows of women, young, old, tired, hopeful, filled the seats before her. She took a deep breath, hands steady at the podium. "My name is Clara Bennett," she began, smiling faintly, "and I once believed love meant never saying no." A ripple of recognition moved through the crowd. "For decades I thought being a good wife and mother meant giving until there was nothing left. I thought if I sacrificed enough, they'd see my worth. But all I did was teach them how to take." She paused, letting the silence linger. "The day my son demanded every dollar I had was the day I finally broke and began again. Saying no didn't destroy my family, it saved me." Dozens of eyes glistened as Clara's voice grew stronger. "You can start over at 50, 60, even 70. Peace doesn't mean forgetting what hurt you. It means refusing to let it define you." When she finished, the audience rose to their feet in applause. One woman whispered, "Thank you. You made me believe I still can." Clara smiled softly. "You can," she said. "We all can." That night, Clara sat on her porch overlooking the quiet water. The air was warm, the sky a wash of gold and indigo. She closed her journal and smiled, not because life was perfect, but because it was finally hers. The money she'd lost was gone forever. The years she spent trying to fix broken men, her husband, her son, could never return. But what she gained was something far more valuable: the strength to stand alone, and the peace that comes from knowing she no longer owed anyone her silence. Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Emily, a photo of the kids building sandcastles, their faces bright with joy. Beneath it, a single line, "They ask about you every day, Grandma." Clara's eyes softened. She whispered to the sea, This is enough." She raised her glass toward the horizon, her voice steady and calm. "To freedom. To every woman who thought she had to break to be loved." Then she turned on the small camera beside her and began recording her story, her voice gentle but resolute. "If this reached you," she said, "don't forget to like, share, and tell me where you're watching from. Remember, it's never too late to start again."